You know, when we picture a king being executed, we probably think of something quick, right? A single, decisive moment. But the thing is, throughout history, when a ruler was killed in public, it was almost never just about ending a life. Oh no, it was a performance. It was a calculated and often incredibly brutal piece of political theater. And it was designed to do something way more profound, to completely unmake a king in the eyes of the very people who once saw him as their sovereign.
And this quote, this really nails it. The goal wasn't just death, not even close. It was about wiping out their very legitimacy, about rewriting history, and sending a message so loud and clear that no one could possibly miss it. The old power is gone and a new one is here. These events were engineered to be unforgettable, to be burned into the collective memory.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we're going to talk about this idea of power as public theater. Then, we'll dive right into the deep end with the absolutely harrowing case of the Byzantine Emperor Andronikos and what's called his three-day erasure. After that, we'll zoom out and compare his story to other famous royal executions. You'll see how the methods change, but the goal stays the same. And we'll wrap it all up by asking, what does it all mean? What happens when power is no longer seen as sacred?
Right, so this is the core idea we have to get our heads around. Executing a ruler in public is never, ever just a punishment. It's communication. It's a political statement performed on the biggest stage imaginable. I mean, think about it. A quiet assassination in some dark palace hallway. That's one thing. This is the exact opposite. This is meant to be seen, to be understood by everyone, and to be remembered. It's the transfer of power made horribly, undeniably real.
Okay, so what's the strategy here? Well, the brutality isn't just for shock value. It has a purpose, and it usually has three parts. First, you have to delegitimize the ruler. You have to turn them from a godlike king into a common criminal or a traitor. Step two, you have to free the people from their old loyalties. By making them watch or even participate, the population becomes complicit. They're now part of the new order. And third, and this one is crucial, it's a raw display of the new power. It's basically saying, look, we did this to a king. Just imagine what we could do to you.
So to really get this, we need to look at a case study. And folks, there is no better, or frankly more gruesome example than the fall of the Byzantine Emperor Andronikos I, way back in 1185. We're going to Constantinople, the heart of an empire, where an emperor's power, as you're about to see, was anything but guaranteed. And this is super important to understand. Unlike a lot of Western kings who could claim a divine right from God, a Byzantine emperor's job was more like a high-stakes balancing act. He needed the army, he needed the church, he needed the people on the street, and he needed the powerful families in the palace. If just one of those pillars started to wobble, the entire thing could come crashing down. An emperor who lost support could fall, and fall hard.
And this right here is the whole tragedy of Andronikos. He actually came to power on this huge wave of popular support. I mean, he was the guy who was going to clean up the government, take on the corrupt aristocrats. He was a man of the people. But the reality of his 2-year reign, it was a paranoid nightmare. He ruled through pure terror, executing anyone he suspected. The very people who cheered for him were soon living in fear of him. You know, his downfall didn't start with some grand, organized revolution. It was much smaller than that. It all picked off with a failed arrest. Andronikos sent his men to arrest a nobleman, but it went sideways. The nobleman, a guy named Isaac Angelos, actually killed the officer and ran to the biggest church in the city, the Hagia Sophia, to claim sanctuary. A crowd gathered. The city was already a powder keg of resentment, and this was the spark. And Andronikos, the great man of terror, he panicked. And that panic was the final nail in his coffin. So Andronikos tried to escape the city by boat, but he was caught. And what happened next? Well, it wasn't a quick execution, not at all. It was a deliberate, 3-day public spectacle designed not just to kill him, but to symbolically strip away every single shred of his imperial power. This was his erasure, made brutally real for everyone to see.
On the first day, he was paraded through the streets, but not as a fallen emperor. He was treated like a common thief. They cut his hair, pulled out his beard, chopped off one of his hands. Day 2, it got worse. He was blinded in one eye and subjected to more torment right in the city center. And on the final day, they dragged him to the Hippodrome, the massive public arena, and the crowd itself was invited to take part in his final agonizing moments. This wasn't justice. This was a ritual.
And that just brings us to the biggest question of all, right? Why? Why drag it out for 3 days? Why make it so unbelievably publicly brutal? I mean, a quick beheading would have done the job. But as we've already said, just killing him, that wasn't the point.
See, the logic behind this horror show was actually cold and calculated. By inviting the crowd to throw things, to mock him, to literally take part in his death, the new guys in charge made the entire city complicit. It wasn't just their act anymore, it was the people's act. This collective violence made it impossible for him to become a martyr. It spread the blame so wide that no single person could be held responsible. It was designed to guarantee that his legacy was cemented forever as a monster, so no future ruler could ever try to redeem his name. It was a kind of political surgery, a symbolic cleansing of the city.
Okay, so let's pull the camera back a bit. The extreme public humiliation that happened to Andronikos was one way to do it, but it wasn't the only way. If we look at other famous royal executions, we see totally different strategies, but they're all pointing to the exact same goal, the ritual destruction of sovereignty.
This table just lays it out so clearly. With Andronikos, the method was pure humiliation. Turn the tyrant into a criminal and you erase his legitimacy. Now look at Charles I of England. The method was formal legality. He was put on trial, turning the king into a traitor. The goal? To redefine sovereignty itself, to say it belongs to Parliament, not the crown. And then there's Louis XVI in France. The method was the guillotine, cold, mechanical speed. The message there was turning the king into just another citizen, and in doing so, abolishing the very idea of monarchy. 3 different kings, 3 different messages, but one ultimate goal.
Let's just stick with Charles I for a second. His execution in 1649 was so shocking precisely because there wasn't any mob brutality. It was formal, it was quiet, it was almost clinical. And that was the whole point. Parliament was sending a revolutionary message. The law is above the king. The power of institutions, not the rage of a mob, was now in charge. That methodical, cold restraint was its own kind of power, designed not just to kill a man, but to completely rewrite the rules of government. So after looking at all of this, from the frenzied crowds in Constantinople to the solemn scaffold in London, what's the final lesson here? What does the public execution of a ruler really tell us about the nature of power itself?
And here's the crucial, sobering truth. Brutally executing Andronikos didn't save the Byzantine Empire. Not even close. It didn't fix any of the deep, systemic problems that led to his tyranny in the first place. In fact, just 20 years later, the empire was catastrophically weakened and Constantinople itself was sacked. Killing the ruler doesn't fix a broken state. In fact, it often just speeds up the collapse.
And this, right here, is the core lesson. These extreme, public acts of violence against the leader, they don't happen in healthy political systems. They happen only after legitimacy has already crumbled, after the institutions have failed, and when raw violence has replaced the rule of law. The horror we see in the fall of Andronikos isn't the cause of the crisis. It's the final symptom that the crisis has reached a terminal stage. Because at the end of the day, the public execution of a king is the final, brutal admission of a terrifying political truth. Authority, no matter how ancient it claims to be, or how divinely it's ordained, is not sacred.
It's a social contract. It's a shared story we all agree to tell ourselves. And its power is based entirely on our collective belief in it. And as history shows us, again and again and again, that belief can be broken. And when the story falls apart, the performance ends, and the crown falls with it.
So we're left with this question, right? The crowns and scepters might be gone from many parts of the world, but the basic structure is still there. So what does it mean for our own systems of authority, for our governments, for our leaders today, if their power, when you get right down to it, still rests on nothing more solid than what we, all of us, collectively choose to believe? That's something to think about.